Welcome back. All right, so over the last week, I've had a lot of thinking about the power rankings and other things of that nature. I'm going to keep them going. And not only that, but there's a big change that's going to get announced soon. There's no point in announcing it yet because it's months off. I did do like a members video about it, but yeah, there's going to be some big changes when it comes to just the way the videos on the channel are all done, and I think it'll make it so it's way easier for me to have everything organized, including power rankings. There's some really fun stuff I've wanted to do, and I just haven't had the space, and I haven't had the ability to get everything done the way I want to. So, for people who have been subscribers for a while, I think it's going to be an exciting time for the channel in 2022. I think it's going to be a very big year for the channel. And I'm really looking forward to it. And it's kind of completely turned my mood around. If you noticed the review I did on Thursday night, that was the most fun I've had doing a review in months. And I had fun last night. I had fun tonight doing the review. And now I'm going to have fun doing the power rankings. I have no fear about tonight's power rankings. Starting off at number 32, Montreal. Montreal, simply put, it's been a long year for them. Carey Price can take his time coming back. And yeah, Montreal 32 still on the board. They may move up only because there's one team that's threatening to drop to the bottom, and it's not Arizona. We all would have figured it was Arizona, but not really. So for Montreal, they're 32 on the board. If they'd beaten Chicago, maybe they're not 32 on the board, but they didn't beat Chicago. Number 31, dropping 2 spots from where they were last week. I think it's the lowest Seattle's been. I don't think Seattle's been 32, but it's not a good time for Seattle. They're not getting the goals. The defense has been out of position. The goaltending, Drieger, I think, is the better of the two goaltenders. I still think that. I've thought that the whole way through. That of the two, I think Drieger's having the better season. But they're still just not getting the results. And so for Seattle, they're 31 this week. There's a real chance they could be bottom of the board next week without a good week from their team, without some kind of wins or something. Just something positive happening for Seattle. Number 30, moving up 1 spot from last week, Buffalo. Buffalo did have the positive result against the Nashville Predators. So Buffalo... I mean, there's been some bad times, and it's certainly not a fun time for them. But they're not 32nd on the board, right? And meanwhile, Arizona fans are going to say, he forgot to rank us this week, didn't he? No, I didn't. Nope. Number 29, dropping 2 spots from last week, Philadelphia. I can't prove that Philadelphia's given up. I can't. But that game against the New York Rangers tonight, it's one that they really needed. They desperately needed. And they found a way not to get it. So Shesterkin was very good, but a Philadelphia Flyers team that was going to make the playoffs would have found some way to win that game, and it just wasn't there. So for Philadelphia, they dropped to 29th. They were as low as 30th at one point this week, but yeah, they're 29th now, and again, they are absolutely trending in the wrong direction. Number 28, moving up 2 spots for being competitive, for giving it the good fight, and that's Arizona. Well, even though this puck does say Phoenix, I will acknowledge this is a Phoenix Coyotes puck because I do not have very many of the current puck designs that aren't actually the logo they use coming into this season. That's going to change, though. I am going to have some Kachina pucks in their current designs that the pucks are in and all that. So for the Coyotes, not an awful week. The win over Toronto, that's Vejmelka, right? And then Prosvetov almost gets them a win over Colorado. They did get destroyed by Colorado tonight, but honestly, they had a good week. They had a better week, I thought, than any of the 4 teams that are below them, and the effort is there. That's really what you're looking for. At the very least, the goaltending's been there, right? Next on the board, number 27, is New Jersey. Now, New Jersey gets passed. This is one of those weeks where a team just, gets passed on the board. And for New Jersey, it's been 1 up, 1 down, couple down, maybe a win, maybe an overtime loss, and it's just New Jersey's not trending in the right direction either. So New Jersey finds themselves still in the bottom row. I'm trying to think of when the last time was they were out of the bottom. It's been a while. It's been a while since they were out of the bottom row. So New Jersey, number 27, and we'll see if they move up next week, right? Number 26, moving up 2 spots from where they were last week, is Ottawa. Yeah, the Sens. And these are the new pucks. So these are new pucks I got this week. I also have other pucks that I ordered today that'll be here over the next week or two, I guess. I'm trying to change out the pucks a bit and make it a little more unpredictable which pucks I'm going to use. So yeah, the Ottawa Senators, number 26, they win both games in Alberta. They looked better than Calgary. And then tonight against Edmonton, that was a lot of heart they showed, and they're having fun. And it is unusual to see a team with a record as bad as theirs that's having fun the way they are. But when you look at their record over their last 11 games, they've won 7 of them. So Ottawa's doing pretty darn well right now, and they're playing the spoiler role okay. So it started out that they were winning really sloppy, kind of ugly games. They won a couple of games that were pretty good for them this week. So, I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs or anything, but don't take them lightly. Number 25, rounding out this round, this row on the board, at 25, dropping 1 spot from last week, the New York Islanders. So this is a puck that was actually sent to me by a subscriber. So I've never seen this anywhere, so if anybody's going to ask where I got this puck, it's a New York Islanders team store, I do believe. But yeah, and it's fun because it's really easy to see which puck that is from a distance, right? So while you may have trouble on your phone making out some of them, the Islanders one will show up. The Islanders, that loss against Washington is why they're in the bottom row. There was a team that passed them today. Otherwise, they would have been 24th again. With the schedule being as broken up as it is, there are a lot of teams that didn't move very much at all. Although, for teams that had a good week or an iffy week, they may have seen more movement, right? So for the New York Islanders, it's drop a 1 spot. It's a tough loss against Washington. Getting shut out, that's their 4th time shutout this season. It's happening too often. Number 24, moving up 2 spots from last week. Chicago, the Blackhawks. I don't know that Chicago can get back into the hunt for the playoffs. I don't think they can. I just think that the math is against them. However, the West is not the East. If they were in the East, yeah, throw dirt on them and they're done. In the West, not necessarily. So, the shutout win tonight for Fleury, maybe if they can build on it. The problem really for Chicago has been, in recent weeks, building on those wins. So Chicago moves out of the bottom row. It's not the first time they've moved out of the bottom row this year. It's a matter of them staying out of that bottom row. Number 23, same spot as last week, and it feels like they're just destined to just stay there. And that's Columbus. Just stay there. And this puck I've had for over 20 years. I got it the first year in the league, I do believe. And I would have no idea at the time that would be used for a video like this. I would have no idea, and if you told me at the time, I would have smacked you. So I was an angry young man. So Columbus, no, I wasn't. Columbus stays 23rd. It just, and again, this is one of those things where I try to say when I'm doing these power rankings, if a team loses a game or wins a game, but I feel like, I've got them in the right spot, they don't have to move up or down. So, yep, they beat Carolina, and then they got absolutely annihilated by Florida. So, to me, that says, you know what? They're probably in the right spot. And so, yeah, 23 is where they end up this week. Same as last week, same as the week before. Number 22, down 1 spot from last week. They only played the 1 game, but it's a result you're not going to like. And that's the Oilers. This is a puck I've had kicking around for a long time. So this is a puck that's definitely seen some better days. And but I've had it for a very long time. I don't think I've got a date on this either. Nah, there's no date on these or anything. So yeah, this, I'll just go out on a limb and say 90s. Sure, 90s. But yeah, the Edmonton Oilers, 22. That loss against Ottawa. I was ready to move them up, but because there's other teams that I thought, well, they've got to be below Edmonton. Nope. So yeah, down 1 spot for Edmonton, and when Evander Kane arrives, we'll see. Because at this point, it's got to be Edmonton, right? If Edmonton doesn't get Evander Kane, who else is really in the running at this point? And I thought that Connor McDavid basically defending the idea of signing Evander Kane tells me, anyways, that there's a really good chance that he's going there, and it's probably going to happen. Number 21, dropping 3 spots from last week. It was a rough week for Vancouver. For the Vancouver Canucks, it really is a reality check. The going through Florida and then going through Carolina part of it. These are the best teams in the league, and Vancouver is not amongst them. Vancouver, an amazing run under Bruce Boudreau. Relatively winnable games, though, throughout that really good run. And now that they're into the really tough teams, it just shows what they need to do and how far they are behind those elite teams. It's a good thing. Long term, it's a good thing, even though short term it kind of sucks to see them going through this. Long term, it's going to be better for the organization because it means they don't just win a whole bunch of games and end up in the running for the playoffs. Then maybe they end up a little bit short. You go, well, give them another chance next year. No. If they fall off like this, it tells management changes need to be made. And I would agree with that right now. Changes do need to be made. With the future in mind, any trading of first-round draft picks will be very put out. Number 20, moving up 2 spots from last week, Detroit. Detroit didn't have a fantastic week, but I thought they had a better week than Edmonton and a better week than Vancouver. So they move up. They are losing ground on Boston because Boston's not losing. And the 8 teams in the playoffs in the East clearly don't want to give any hope to teams below the playoff line. So Detroit's in that position where if they were in the West, they're in the mix. But being in the East, they're really not. So 7 points out of the playoffs, but I thought they had a decent week. The game against Buffalo tonight, nice result. Nedeljkovic with the shutout. And Detroit is, I think, right now playing better than the teams that are below them on the board. Number 19, dropping 5 spots from last week. Anaheim, I really get the feeling like this is just cascading in the other direction now. They had this fantastic run at the start of the season, and it just feels like it's inevitable that they drop out of the playoffs. The only reason they haven't is because they're in the Pacific, where it's been bad. But LA's getting better, so with LA's record getting better, it means that Anaheim is likely falling below them, and then it's just a matter of somebody in the Pacific passing them. So you got Pacific. So that's 3. That's half the division already on the board. It's not a fantastic division. As advertised, it's not a fantastic division, which is giving Anaheim reason to maybe think about making a move or two here and there, as long as it's not giving up the future, to solidify their spot in the playoffs. Maybe go for it, right? So once the GM search is complete in Anaheim, we'll see how things shake down and what the plan is. Next on the board, number 18, moving up 2 spots from last week, is San Jose. So a tough loss for them tonight, but I didn't think they played badly. I thought they played well. Domingue just, stole it from them, but they still get the point out of it. They're playing well enough right now that, they look like they could end up taking Anaheim out of their spot at some point soon, right? Anaheim just keeps losing the games, and Winnipeg, San Jose is winning every other. So as long as they're 500 and Anaheim is not, eventually you pass them. So we'll see if that is in fact the case. But San Jose, another Pacific team in the bottom half of the board. Speaking of which, number 17, same spot as last week, is Calgary. Now I debated about whether or not to have Calgary below San Jose. You could make the argument for Calgary below San Jose. Sure. I decided I'll just leave them at 17. They don't move up. They don't move down. The loss against Ottawa is tough. We'll see how they do in their next game. And in that next game, it'll likely give me a better picture of where Calgary's at. Rough week for the Pacific. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 6 right here. And then you've got a 6th team here. So there's only 2 teams in the Pacific that are in the top 16 right now on the board. Number 16, not a Pacific Division team, a team that drops 1 spot from last week, and that's Dallas. Dallas should have dropped further. Yes. Here's the problem. I'm not going to have Detroit all of a sudden jump up to 16. Anaheim's not going to be ahead of Dallas right now. San Jose moves up a couple spots, but I don't have them headed. So really, this is a matter of Dallas keeps 16 just because I didn't feel like any of the teams in this row below them necessarily should be ahead of them. And again, it's going through Florida. It's a tough ride going through Florida right now. And for Dallas, it's not looking a whole lot better than it did for Vancouver. So we'll see how Dallas does. And Dallas's road record is really and truly atrocious. It is awful. So that's a real problem for Dallas that will definitely keep them from being a contender in my eyes anytime soon. Number 15, moving up 4 spots from last week. This is one of those weird things where They play once or twice. I think was there 2 games for Winnipeg? Anyways, Winnipeg ends up 15th. Winnipeg kind of by default ends up ahead of Calgary, San Jose, definitely Anaheim right now, and Dallas. So Winnipeg moves up into the top 2 rows. I thought they looked good. Hellebuck looked good. And so we'll see whether or not they can keep things rolling in the right direction. I really think they should be in one of those wild card spots. As rough as things look in the West, I would say by the end of the season, it won't even out. You're still going to have a team miss the playoffs. Potentially a team miss the playoffs in the East that would have made it in the West. That could still happen, absolutely. It could be Detroit. But I think Winnipeg's going to get one of those wild card spots. Dallas could be the one, too, that gets hot and gets one of those wild card spots, too. It's going to be a fight. I think Edmonton eventually turns it around. Calgary should. But, again, with Calgary, it's weird. They can look really, really good for a long stretch, and then all of a sudden it just falls apart. Next up, number 14, dropping 5 spots from last week. Rough week. Capitals. The Capitals did win today. They got a 2-0 shutout win over the Islanders. That didn't change their ranking for me. It didn't. It wasn't like it was a convincing victory. It was a 1-0 win with the shootout goal added for 2-0. I still have the same concerns with the Caps. That now they've won 21 out of 38 games. And I do have some concerns with the team right now. And so I dropped them down to 14. I feel like there's still a lot of work to be done by the Caps at this point. So we'll see if they turn around. And I think they should, right? Maybe that empty net goal for Ovechkin, maybe that gets him going. Maybe he gets a hat trick in the next game. Oh, right. That's tomorrow. And that's against the Canucks. Definitely a hat trick next game. Number 13, same spot as last week. Same spot. And that's the LA Kings. I think the Kings are in a good spot here. I'm going to say I do think that at some point they could end up moving into the top 12. It is tough to move up from this spot, though. The LA Kings now have a very good record. And, yeah, that's another Pacific Division team. There's only one Pacific Division team in the top 12. And for LA, the sky could be the limit. I'm not as convinced as some Kings fans right now that they're in contender territory. When I did the 13 contenders video, I saw comments, but why not the Kings? Well, A, they didn't meet the criteria, which was points percentage of 600 and higher. And B, it's a very good run they've got going, but we'll see how sustainable it is. So for me with the Kings, I like them at 13th. I think that's a good spot for them right now. And I think that's pretty accurate. Like tonight, they beat Seattle, yes. Was it a big, resounding 5-1 type victory? Not really. And Seattle is 31st on the board. So, again, now a very good win for LA this week against Pittsburgh, though. Nothing taken away from them there. Number 12. Did not change spots this week. Nashville. Now, last week there was a lot of upset with where I had Nashville. You'll notice Nashville lost to Buffalo this week. Nashville lost in overtime to Boston this week. I did not drop them down. And I'm sure there would be Preds fans coming into this video saying, well, we lost to Buffalo this week, so you can drop to like 19th. That's not how power rankings work. I still have them at 12th. They didn't move up. They didn't move down. I still think they're in the right spot. So we'll see in the coming weeks if they start, getting on another roll. They had a decent game in Boston today for sure. But, yeah, to me, 12th is fine. Number 11, moving up 5 spots from last week, is Boston. This is where it gets weird. So people know that I cheer for Boston, right? So my favorite teams are Vancouver, Boston, Dallas, in that order. So when Boston starts doing really well and I move them up the power rankings board, there will always be people who say there's a bias in where Boston is. I remember in previous years, Boston would be number 1 on the power rankings, and I legit felt bad. I'd be like, I don't think I could do a power rankings where Boston's number 1. It looks terrible. But most people understood. There were still the odd comments here and there about, it's a bias, makes Boston number 1. Boston's playing really well. They've won 8 out of 9. They're getting the depth scoring. Taylor Hall started putting the puck in the net. And really, the goaltending has been fine. I didn't think they needed Tuukka Rask. Their goals against was already really good. With Tuukka Rask, who knows? Maybe they can end up getting the Jennings. But I really think Boston's playing really solid hockey. Again, whether or not it's sustainable, we'll see. But I think this is the highest Boston's been on the power rankings in quite some time. So we'll see how long they're at 11 or higher, right? Number 10, Same spot as last week. And this is the same spot they've been now for 3 straight weeks. And that's the New York Rangers. And again, it's the I think they're in the right spot kind of thing, combined with we're not getting as many games as we normally would in a week. So some teams may not move. LA, Nashville, Rangers, none of them move. But if you've watched my power rankings in previous seasons, you would know it's not unusual at this time of year. Oh, there's Tom Jones stuck in my head again. It is not... Okay, now I'm trying to think of a way to say it without saying it again. It is actually standard at this time of year and beyond that some teams will stay in pretty much the same spot. And that week-to-week results may help, may hinder, but in general, some teams, it just kind of reinforces to me that the teams are in the right spot. So, as an example, Nashville, I felt like they were winning some games that maybe they shouldn't have, and now they've lost a couple of games, but I still feel like they're in the right spot. For the Rangers, I just feel like they're in the right spot right now. So number 10 is where the Rangers are at this stage. Number 9, dropping 2 spots from last week, the Pacific leaders, Vegas. So it's pretty damning of the Pacific, isn't it? That they don't have a team in the top 8. They have 1 in the top 9. They have 2 in the top 13. And it means that for Vegas, we may not know how good they are. We may have no idea. We may see a team go into the playoffs who can get 95 points, win the division. 95 points may win you the Pacific. And we might look at them going into the playoffs and say, well, Vegas isn't winning anything. And then in the playoffs, it's a whole different ballgame, right? So for Vegas, I do have them at 9th right now. I think that once Pacioretty's back, the scoring will go up. I do have some questions about the goaltending, whether or not that part's good enough for them. But yeah, so I have them at number 9 right now. Now let's get into the top 8. Number 8, moving up 3 spots from last week. And I had to kind of chuckle when I saw how this week's power rankings turned out. The Minnesota Wild are back in 8th. They're back. They're number 8. Minnesota is back where they were, I think, a month ago that they were number 8? I think it was a month ago. It's been a while. Maybe it's been a little more than a month ago. But yeah, Minnesota, number 8. Good week for them. They score goals in bunches. They score in ridiculous fashion a lot of the time. And Kaprizov is one of the most dynamic forwards in the game. And Zuccarello's just in the zone. So, really, Minnesota ends up back in the top row. So there you go. They're number 8. Number 7, dropping 4 spots from last week is Toronto. So why did Toronto drop? Well, you can point to leads that they couldn't maintain, some sloppy play. And when I'm doing the power rankings board, there's more to it than wins and losses. I've said this before. It's not just wins and losses. How's the team playing? And really with Toronto, there's some sloppiness there. They do get the win tonight against St. Louis. 6-5. Fantastic. And that's after a loss against Arizona. And then they had the win in extra time with Vegas. And so, yeah, for Toronto, they're really kind of all over the place. And I felt like there are 6 teams right now that I look at and I say, yes, I think they would probably best Toronto right now if we started a series today. And so that's one of the things, too, I think about with the power rankings board is, okay, so if the playoffs started tomorrow, who would I favor tomorrow? Which does not mean the same thing that I would say for May, June, when the playoffs are rolling and when Stanley Cup's awarded in June. It's a completely different thing. You don't win the Stanley Cup in January. So there you go. But yeah, for Toronto, I have them at 7th. I still think they're playing well. I think they could tidy up their game a bit. With Marner back, maybe this is a sign that things are going to start getting to that point where they're playing that tidy hockey. I just feel like there hasn't been as much of that as I'd like to see. I know they got goalied by the Arizona Coyotes, but still, you need to see them fight through that. And so, yeah, we'll see where Toronto's at next week. Number 6, this is where things start staying the same. Tampa Bay, same spot they were last week. And this is where, like, going into tonight, I was like, all right, I'm going to see where teams are at. I want to see where teams are at. And yeah, Tampa Bay ends up in 6th. When all the dust clears and I'm done moving teams around, and I move them all week. Every night I move teams on the power rankings board, and Tampa Bay ends up back in 6th. They were as high as 5th at one point this week, but they ended back in 6th. They're playing very well. They're very good at home. They're solid on the road. They're a very good team. They end up 6th on the board. There are teams with ridiculous records right now, And so you could make an argument for at least 6 teams on this board to be number one. And I'm sure there would be Toronto fans that could argue them number one as well. I'm sure there are. And I don't mean that facetiously. I'm sure there are real arguments for why you could put Toronto at number one. You may have reasons why the Rangers could be number one, maybe even Minnesota. And again, you can factor in injuries, COVID lists, all this stuff, and I get it. Number 5, same spot as last week, St. Louis. At one point this week, I had St. Louis up to 4th. They end up back in 5th. The loss against Toronto is what caused me to put them back down to 5th from 4th. That's a loss that... It's the first loss they've had at home in a while, so I feel like it's fine that they're in the same spot. But, we'll see if that's just a one-off or if that's a pattern that's starting. It's always one of those questions, too, whenever I do the power rankings. Is that a pattern or is it just a one-off? And so we don't know yet, right? I would think with Craig Berube behind the bench, they'll fix some of the things that went wrong against Toronto for their next game. They play the Canucks pretty soon, too. Oh, God. I think they play them twice. Okay, and number 4 on the board, same spot they were last week as well. Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh switched back. Pittsburgh gets the win tonight. They kind of goalied San Jose there, right? So Louis Domingue, congratulations on your win tonight. And for Pittsburgh, they are 4th on the board. Kind of a fun road trip for them overall. Kind of a rough road trip as well when they got through LA. But I think they're going to be pretty happy. I think there's just the one more game left on the road trip, right? So, yeah, I mean, for Pittsburgh, it's been a long road trip. But they're going to come home in a good playoff spot. The top 8 in the East, as I've been saying, really, really impressive how well they've played. The only one that I think might be in danger of falling out, maybe particularly could be Washington, but they'd have to lose in regulation for that to start to become a problem. And they're not. So at this point, it's really not a problem. They're still on pace for over 100 points. How they get there, we won't ask. And for Pittsburgh, looks like 100 points for them as well. In a season where there were those that said, well, Pittsburgh's going to fall. Nope, Pittsburgh's number 4. Number 3 on the power rankings board, moving up 5 spots from last week, is Florida. So kind of a funny story here. There's been a lot of talk all week, Florida fans, about how I had them at 8th spot on the power rankings board last week. Yep, and I did. I had them in 8th in power rankings, and I had them in 9th the week before and 10th the week before that. Now they jump up to 3rd by virtue of setting on fire everybody they played. And they had already moved up past 8th, I think, by Sunday night. So people were still complaining about them being in a spot on the power rankings board that they were no longer in. They were no longer 8th by the time that, because again, this board is not necessarily psychic. Right? Yeah, see, it didn't answer me, so it's not psychic. Psychic boards will answer you. I'm not crazy. So, yeah, Florida, number 3 on the board. They've been excellent. Just the 2 teams ahead of them at this point. If they have another week like the one they just had, I would not be surprised if they're number 1 next week at all. Again, you play the opponents that are handed to you, and you destroy them at your own pleasure or your own whatever. And so Florida ends up number 3 on the board this week. Not the end of the world, right? Speaking of not the end of the world, dropping to number 2 from number 1 last week is Carolina. So for the Canes, that 6-0 loss, that's tough. That 6-0 loss against Columbus is a tough one. It's a one-off. They come back, they beat Vancouver today. So it's not something to panic about. I didn't drop them all the way down to 3 or 4 or anything like that. So they just dropped the 1 spot because there's a team that I feel like kind of is a wagon right now. A wagon that is definitely neck and neck and neck, I think, with the other 2 behind them. But for Carolina, it's been an incredible season. That 1 loss against Columbus, I think a big part of that, too, was that Columbus really got embarrassed by that 7-4 comeback and just were bound and determined. And sometimes those things happen where a team comes in and they're just bound and determined not to lose. And so it's more of a reflection on that team's pride, which they didn't have against Florida today at all, rather than a reflection on the Canes. So number 1 on the board, and they had to win tonight to keep number 1. I will say that, Colorado. Colorado moved up to number 1 on the board when Carolina lost that game against Columbus. But I told myself tonight, if the Colorado Avalanche struggle to beat the Coyotes, I can't have them at number 1. But they got 4 points in the 2 games against the Coyotes. It wasn't pretty how they got the 2 points last night, but it was pretty how they got the 2 points tonight. And the fact that they always play their game, and their defense, I think, is getting better. Their goaltending, I think, has been better over the last few weeks. I know their goals against was as low as, I think, 28th in the NHL, and I think now they're at like 20th. So it's getting better. It's still not great. But yeah, for Colorado, they're number 1 on the board. So there you go. Your power rankings for January 15th, 2022. And by the time these go live, it'll be January 16th. But it's January 15th. There's just the one game tomorrow. So I'll get up tomorrow morning and just do a quick little preview for that. And then we'll have that game done. And I don't know, I'll do some fun stuff tomorrow because there's just the one game in the NHL, which is unusual for a Sunday. And I plan to take advantage of it. So stay tuned because Monday's a busy day. Monday is Martin Luther King Day, so they have games all day on Martin Luther King Day. I'm not sure. It just seems odd to me because it doesn't seem like the kind of holiday that you necessarily would have hockey games all day with, but all right, fine, cool. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below regarding the power rankings, which I know you will. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.